You are good to begin.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us on the very first episode, I guess, of our series on how we're going to help you and your team to prepare for students as they enter this fall. We know you have lots of questions, lots of concerns, and you're already starting the planning process for students, as you know that they're going to come in with many achievement gaps, trauma, concerns. Staff have concerns as well. And so we want to be here at KDE and with our standards folks to come in and walk you through ways to start preparing for that change. And ultimately, we want to make sure that you have what you need, the resources that you need, so you can start to strategically prepare for re-entry into the fall academically, and how you can do that so you're not reactionary. We're not placing everybody in interventions, and we know that this is going to be a very unique beginning of a school year with new norms, new challenges, and new gaps. And so we just welcome you for being on. If we will go in and start our PowerPoint today, and just make sure you have a few reminders of things that you can do during this webcast. So as we start to talk through addressing the knowledge gaps and how we prepare academically, there is an opportunity for you to go onto the Go Soapbox website, and that slide will come up here in just a second for you to see how to log in if you are unsure how to do that or have not done that before. The GoSoapbox.com will come up with a website, and it will ask you for an access code. And our access code is KDEOTL. And in that, you can ask any question you want throughout the webcast, and we will be able to address your questions at the end. Of course, this will be archived, and you'll be able to go back and read the questions that folks ask, the information that we provide. And this is just the beginning of a series to provide you support for what you need. So our purpose today is really to start thinking about the impact of remote learning during this spring, as we've all called it, a unique time, unprecedented times, whatever you may call it, and however you have approached it and honestly survived it and planned and prepared for it. We know without a doubt that there is absolutely issues with inequities with learning environments. We know that many of our students have connectivity, access to technology, and parent support where others have none. We know that there's trauma in the home, and we know that there may be certain situations where students just simply have not engaged in learning like they would in a school setting. And so in order to prepare for that, it is essential that we address the gaps by understanding grade level standards. And so what I'm going to do is turn that over to Missy Higgins, and she is going to walk us through how to begin to prepare. We encourage you and your team, your colleagues, to start engaging in this work together, thinking through the options, and really starting to prepare in this time that you may have an opportunity that you typically wouldn't this time of year. But we know that this is going to be a process. It's going to take time. It's continuous learning on our part and on yours. But ultimately, we want to provide the absolute best when students return to us. So Misty, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. And like Amanda was saying, really, the purpose for this webcast today is to provide you an overview of the guidance that we have for the academic reentry of our students. We really want to think about how do we set them up to transition back in a fall in the way that's going to support their academic success. And we really see this, I think, coming across in two stages. For stage one, this ideally would occur before the start of the 2021 school year, so prior to the students returning this fall. And within this stage, part of the work would be the grade level teams assessing the gaps that exist for the students from this 2019-20 school year, as well as that grade level team adjusting their 2021 curriculum to put in room for them to be able to address those potential gaps that students will have. And I'm going to talk more specifically about stage one in just a minute, but stage two, we see this as once teachers have a high level, like overview adjusted curriculum in place, like this plan in place for next year, stage two then is going to be the day-to-day, week-to-week formative assessment that they gather that's going to help inform their instructional decisions as they move throughout the school year next year. And we really, when we provide guidance around that formative assessment piece, we're looking at doing that in two kind of specific areas. One of those is using pre-assessment. So it's using pre-assessment to gather the data to see where the students are in their understanding around those areas that we think they would have potential gaps. And then the second part of that is once you've gathered that data, how do you then act on the data? So really providing guidance around strategies that teachers could use at the classroom level to help inform their instructional decisions and how they might lay out their lessons for that specific area. And one thing we just want to, make sure that we're careful of next year is that we don't just start throwing a lot of our kids into tier 2 interventions, because the reality is we have lots of students that will come into next school year who it's not that they have a skills deficit. The reality is they've just not had the opportunity to have the exposure to interact with some of their grade level standards from this year. So they just need extra time and support at the classroom level to even get them to the point where they can interact with their grade level standards. So it's around guidance really of strategies teachers can use to gather the data and then use that data to inform their instruction. Stage 2, we will specifically begin rolling out guidance for that beginning in late summer. But what we want to do today is focus in on stage 1 and what we kind of see that work looking like. And so for the step 2, or for the stage 1 with this academic reentry, we see this in 3 steps. Now, in full disclosure, step 1 is going to be the one where there's the most work occurring. I think the bulk of the work is here. So step 1 would be where you would have your grade level teams working together to do 2 things. The first is for them to identify potential time in their 2021 curriculum. We all know that every year we enrich our curriculum, that we have opportunity, we have the time and flexibility to really add in these pieces that we love. But the reality is we're in a unique situation in this upcoming school year. So we're going to have to really tighten up our 2021 grade level curriculum to make sure we carve out the time that we're going to need to address those potential gaps from this school year. So the grade level team would work together to look at where can we tighten up, where can we save time on the 2020 curriculum. Then the second thing they're going to do is they're going to work together to identify where they think the potential gaps exist for their students that they currently have in this 1920 school year. What we're going to have them do in that particular step is really focus in on were there standards that were only addressed during this remote learning time that we know all students maybe didn't get the same opportunity and experience to interact with those. Or the reality is there may be some standards they didn't even have an opportunity to get to, period, that was built into their curriculum. So step 1 is all about a grade level team figuring out where can we save time in our curriculum next year, and then explicitly stating where they see the gaps existing for their kids this current school year as they move into the next. The better job that they do in that step 1 piece, the easier it's going to be and the smoother that step 2 and 3 will go. So step 2 is we recommend that every grade level have vertical conversations specifically with the grade level below them and the grade level above them. That's within their particular school. So the grade level below, obviously, they're going to share, let's say I'm a 4th grade teacher. We're going to meet with the 3rd grade teachers and they're going to share with us where specifically they're thinking students will come in next year with gaps in their academic knowledge. Then as a 4th grade teacher, we're also going to meet with the 5th grade teachers in our school so that we can share with them where we anticipate the kids coming to them next year and where those gaps would be. And within step 2, we also want to provide guidance on just some logistical considerations for the vertical conversations at those transition years. And the larger the school district, the more feeder schools you obviously have, but those vertical conversations are going to be equally as important to make sure that they're getting that same level of information to inform their curriculum next year. And then finally, the grade level teams would come back together and they're going to take their work from step 1 and they're going to take the work from step 2, and together they're going to draft an adjusted curriculum for the 2021 school year. And so we know that that's a lot built into it, and we are working on guidance, resources, and templates to support this work. And one of the things we really want to do to further support this is offer additional specific guidance through through 2 upcoming webcasts. The first webcast would be May 6th, and we would really dig into that first step. And so we would share with people the specific process that teachers would go through to really identify where there are areas that they could save time in their curriculum next year, and then working on identifying the gaps from this school year. And then in the May 13th webcast, again, we would provide very specific guidance on the step 2 and the step 3 of this process, because at the end of it all, we want teachers being able to come into the fall school year having this big picture plan of a curriculum in place that is really very tightened up, but it has already carved out time to address the gaps and knowing specifically where they anticipate those gaps being. So Jackie is now going to walk you through what we see as some action steps that you may want to consider taking between now and joining us back for that May 6th webcast.
Thank you, Misty. So as you are considering all of it's a lot to take in. You've listened to this overview of the things that we're getting ready to take place. And I hope that this really meets a need that you're thinking about how to move forward. And here's some action items and some steps that you could take between now and the webcast that's coming up in May 6th. First of all is thinking about personnel. So can we identify personnel that you want to be with you during these upcoming webcasts? Folks that you can identify that it's going to be necessary for them to hear the information because they're going to be imparting the information and need to understand all the aspects of how this works. And also identifying which district and or school folks need to be involved in the planning for academic reentry. For instance, if you're talking about building principals, how many or who do you need to identify in that area that needs to be a part of that team? Because their job as a building principal is really setting the expectations and building in and protecting the time for the work to happen. So for them to be able to do that well is having a really good understanding of this process. Or maybe instructional coaches or lead teachers, who needs to be involved from that area because they might be the ones actually facilitating the work at the school level. And at the district level, those that help establish that vertical expectation, maybe instructional supervisors, who needs to be involved in that area. So one of the first action items is considering personnel and who would be involved. Another action item has to do with resources. We have tried to be, we want to make this as simple and try to give as many explicit steps that you could take. So we'd like to offer this as an action item, is to think about what you need to have on hand and to be gathering. So for instance, one thing that you would need to go through some of these steps that Misty's already mentioned would deal with your local curriculum. So having that 2019-20 local curriculum for each grade level or course is going to be essential as you begin to analyze that curriculum and looking for those potential knowledge gaps. And you also need the Kentucky Academic Standards, that electronic version of the standards. And in our guidance, we're also going to offer links to all of those, but you can also go to kystandards.org and you can find all of our standards there as well. The third action item that I would mention would be time. So identifying time, and we know that's this precious element that we're always working with, but to identify the time that's coming up maybe during these upcoming teacher work days or professional learning days so that you can use those, leverage those as best you can for this upcoming 2020-2021 curriculum adjustments. That date is going to be really difficult for us to say for a couple of years, isn't it? But we want to be able to have that time available so we can do grade level analysis, and that's going to take some time. And then vertical analysis, when we're having those vertical conversations with other schools, maybe it's a feeder school, maybe it's other grade levels within that school. So being able to carve out what that's going to look like, whether or not you're going to be able to offer professional learning or professional development credit for those. I mean, that's a local decision that you would make. So just thinking about those three things are going to be a major piece between now and that May 6th webcast when we begin to really step deeper into those step 1, step 2, and getting involved in the actual work. So we're glad that you could be with us today. And if you do have questions, we're going to go to Thomas and see if there are any questions in GoSoapbox.com. The access code again is KDEOTL. Of course, you can ask those questions, but we also hope that you'll join us for the upcoming webcast so that we can begin to work through this academic re-entry together.
Hello, Jackie and everyone. At this moment, there's questions pertaining to some items with K-Prep, and I feel at this time we'll work on getting answers for those. But at the moment, we don't have an answer, but we'll be working on that. And then we have a question about professional learning in general and whether or not KD is recommending that being virtual. And that is a kind of a larger agency question. So the only other stuff pertaining to this particular webcast was there were some issues with the toolbar that it looked like were rectified. And then a suggestion for making sure that slides are maybe available to people beforehand.
And Thomas, this is Amanda, just to weigh in on the professional learning piece, just as something for consideration, is that as you prepare for finishing out your contract days and even preparing for July for professional learning and what's going to be needed, I think this series will be right in line, but we also have multiple online opportunities for multiple different audiences, from classified to certified leadership, that you can look on the professional learning bulletin board. It will tell you what audiences would be appropriate, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous, meaning whether it's live or you can watch it archived, and even if there's ELA credit assigned to it. So I would encourage you to look at that to see what aligns best with your needs in your district and school and your professional growth area. Just because we are unsure of what phase we will be in and what districts will be able to do, or even what KDE can offer in person versus virtual, we will follow the guidelines of the public health department and the executive orders of the governor, of course. But I do encourage you to look and see what's available. Now is the time to get personalized on what it is you need and what's available. And we really do hope that you and your team virtually will join our team to engage in this work. And really, even the things that Jackie has mentioned to do before the next webcast is going to be a little bit of a lift, and really take some time to think through what that information would be and how to prepare for what we've never prepared for before. So,
and Amanda, also, I meant to mention earlier about our co-ops, our educational co-ops. You don't forget about them there too, because they're there for that very purpose. Obviously, we've had conversations with them as well. They're very concerned and they're very interested, as always, in being a part of this kind of work. And they may be there for content support, for space, for advice. So I would reach out to my educational cooperative as well. Maybe that could be another of those action items.
All right.
And the only other thing that I would add, Amanda, is I hope people know, because they haven't seen the process yet, but when you look at this process and how we're going to roll that out on May 6th, it can be done virtually or face-to-face. So please keep in mind, it will work in either setting that you find that you have to do that piece. But again, it will work in either setting.
Okay, some more questions have funneled in. So one, vertical and horizontal meetings of this type will have to take place virtually. Will one of the future webinars address suggested methods?
Misty or Jackie, do you all want to address that question?
Yeah, are they asking, I just want clarification because it is definitely something we can consider. I'm just wondering, are they thinking about like maybe platforms that work better for those type of conversations? Just a little bit more specification on what they're wanting so it can guide our work.
Thomas, do you want to go into the next question that may be coming up?
Yeah. Okay. So other questions, do you recommend teachers front load content, or will steps 2 and 3 focus more on spiraling important standards from the previous grade?
Amanda, do you want to respond to that one?
No, go ahead. Please.
I think for our standpoint, I don't know that there's one right answer to how schools want to tackle that. And when we get to the portion about drafting that adjusted curriculum, it'll be more of looking at possible ways you could do that. And I think both of those that you just mentioned are possible ways. Some people may want to front load and do that at the beginning, and that's how they want to adjust their curriculum. Although others may want to embed where those potential gaps exist as they connect to the content at the grade level that next year. So I don't know that there's a perfect way to do that. We will more or less offer just suggestions of those are different ways you could consider.
And I think too, once you begin to go through the analysis of the curriculum, you'll better know where you stand on all that in the first place. So taking those step-by-step processes might make that an easier answer in a little while after you've done that work.
Okay, another question. We need time or statement. We need times for the May 6th and 13th webcast and information. We basically information on those. So those will be on the same time, and information is coming that'll be sent out in the commissioner's email. If you are subscribed to KY Standards, it'll also be sent out in that format as well. Anything else that you all want to add, Jackie, Misty, Amanda, or Krista?
Yes, I saw something about the slide presentation as well. As soon as this video from today is archived, the PowerPoint slide will be attached with that when we send it out in the communications. And hopefully you can see my slide deck now, and I have the slide back up with those two specific dates. And like Thomas said, more communications will be coming out that have that same information.
Okay, are there any other questions, Thomas, that have come in?
Just making sure that none have been upvoted.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this moment, it looks like we've addressed most of the questions we can, and there's some questions again pertaining to assessment and K-Prep, and then we will have internal discussions about kind of giving guidance on that later.
That sounds great. And Misty, would you like me to close this out today?
Absolutely.
All right. So we hope that we've piqued your interest a little bit and started helping you to think through the approach that you're going to take that's systematic, intentional, and strategic. It's going to be a lift. So now is the time to start and to know that you're not alone. And really to the point where Jackie said about your co-ops, they are absolutely aware of this series. They may be online actually and are very willing to help assist and support you as you prepare. Their number one question to us, actually a couple questions they had for us Monday, was what can we do to help support KDE to get the information out to our districts and help them prepare for summer and fall, and specifically reentry. So you have a lot of buy-in and a lot of support surrounding you throughout the state. So we do hope you'll take advantage of this, that you'll prep your work, you'll do your homework before next week's viewing. And of course, this will be archived and also with the PowerPoint. I will remind you, if you are not on the standards website, if you'll go to kystandards.org, there's a plus sign, I believe in the top left hand corner of the website, and you can subscribe and it will send you a notice anytime that there is a webcast. And so you will be able to be reminded, because if you're like me, your days are confused and your calendar gets pretty booked. So it's a great reminder of new events that are going to take place and resources that are available. So we encourage you to do that if you have not done so already, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great afternoon.